Happy Sunday. I got a real interesting video to drop today for you guys. Been waiting all week to do it. And I figured, football ties into the story we're going to talk about. And, today I'm waiting for my Patriots to come on. They're on at 4 today. They've been hard to watch this year, boy. I'm sure most of the people out there, they're ready to pour it on all those years of Tom Brady. And we sucked this year. We got the personnel to be good, but, So before I step out to go over a friend's house and watch the game and whatnot, I figured I'd give you this week's video. So today's video is going to be on none other than South Bronx, Soundview Homes' own Pistol Pete Rollack and the Sex Money Murder Gang. Now, for me, it's a great book. There's a book. It's Sex Money Murder. The audiobook is excellent. I love audiobooks. I'm kind of a cheater, right? I'd rather listen to it, whatever. And but it's a fantastic book, and it takes you through the perspective of so many different characters and stuff like that. I'd be here. I think the book is like 14 hours. It's not quite the 5 families with Saul and Rob, but it's a long book with a lot of different characters that go a lot of different ways. So the video is about Pistol Pete, but it's also about Sex Money Murder. So I'm going to touch on them too and some of the main characters. If you've read the book or if you haven't, I'll touch on them a little bit. But like I said, I'm going to try to stick to just Pistol Pete and, the main exploits of the gang and the terror that they caused in the Bronx back then. I mean, you're talking about it, people say a different world. This is a different universe, like back in those days, from, I believe it was 1987 to 1994, the number of murders was 2,000 or greater for that entirety. You know what I mean? So 7 years. And you don't forget the 70s were crazy. All that stuff was just nuts. But that stretch from 87 to 94, it obviously correlated with the crack epidemic. You know what I mean? I don't care what you say. I was born in 92. You know what I mean? So not quite but it was still big when I was a kid, and still in the 90s and stuff like that before, it switched over to painkillers and, back to, heroin rebranded as whatever you want to call it, But I want to, before we start the story, I just want to make it completely clear, if it wasn't crystal clear already, I don't condone any of this stuff. I don't condone murder. I don't condone selling drugs. I don't condone doing drugs. You know what I mean? I have struggled with addiction in my life, and I haven't touched an opiate since 2015. It's been a long time. I don't like to touch on it too much. I mean, those who know, but so I like doing this stuff too because I mean, some of these stories, they have redemption and stuff like that, and characters change, or they, or whatever, you know what I mean? But this is a story I really like. I've been waiting all week to give this story to you guys. So, without further ado, I didn't mean to, kill the vibe of the video or stuff, but I feel, I've got hounded a couple times of people, well, you get a little too, just because this excites you and certain stuff you can relate to and whatnot, people may get confused and think that you're actually condoning this stuff and you find it. I don't. I absolutely do not. Do I think that there's an extra level of honor to those guys who stand tall and don't fold and do take, hey, fuck you, give me the 100 years. Hey, who doesn't? You know what I mean? But I just wanted to put that out there. Anyways, let's get into the video. So without further ado, Pistol Pete and Sex Money Murder. Pistol Pete was born in the South Bronx, right outside of the Soundview Homes, not in the projects. His father was a big man. His father knew all these people. He actually wasn't, didn't live in Soundview. Lived like right out, as close as you can get to Soundview without living there. So essentially, he grew up in Soundview. He was born in 1975. He's currently 48 years old, and he's cooling his heels at the Supermax, as far as I know, which is terrible. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody should be there. If you ask me who belongs in Colorado, in the Supermax, it's child molesters and chomos, rapists and all types of sexual predator people, serial killers. I mean, like your Ted Bundy serial killers, not I didn't have a dime or a pot to piss in, so I had to go whack all these people off. I really feel terrible. No, not that person. You know what I mean? But yeah, you know, it's not a place you want to be. You know, a lot of high profile people there and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as you know, those any crimes towards a kid, you know what I mean? School shooters and stuff like that, they should go there. Fucking right, you know what I mean? Like, hey, yeah. So if they don't know, if we don't have the pleasure of putting you down after you do this cowardly act, that's where you should go. You should head out to the Supermax. But that's where they got Pistol Pete at. I don't agree with it. I don't make the rules. Let's get into the video. So, Pistol Pete's father, you can't talk about Pistol Pete without mentioning the father. The father was real deal Holyfield. He had ties into Nicky Barnes. He knew Guy Fisher, was tied in there, had some type of connection with Guy Fisher who got him to Nicky Barnes, and he was actually in the indictment that that Barnes ended up flipping on. He was one of those co-defendants that he turned on. It's also well known that the father had extreme connections into the Gambino crime family, which I thought was interesting. He had went away with there was a couple of people involved with that too, with the heroin stuff, and you know, with the big cases with Nicky Barnes and your Matty Madonnas and all that. But yeah, you know, like, excuse me. Pistol Pete's father is as real as it gets. You know, he on December 2nd, 1977, Leonard P.D. Rollack and 10 other defendants, including heroin kingpin Nicky Barnes and Guy Fisher, were indicted for possession of 107.6 grams of heroin. Pistol Pete's father was also indicted for murder, the murder of Norman Bannister, as well as conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of possession with intent to distribute heroin, conspiracy with intent to distribute heroin in Manhattan, the Bronx, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Boston, Massachusetts, and Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, Leonard Rollack, Pistol Pete's father, wouldn't get the chance. He wouldn't get the chance to do what his son did later on down the road. Pistol Pete had a whole nother level of ingenuity. We'll get into that. So anyways, the government offered him a 15-year plea deal, which, you know, sounds like a lot, but, you know, compared to what it could be, really wasn't. He said no fucking way. He jumped bail and took off, and wasn't apprehended till 4 months later. In 1990, after a 4-month trial, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. All of a sudden, that 15 years sounds like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why you never know, you know, the legal system can be confusing and stuff like that, you know. But anyways, so that's the stock that Pistol Pete comes from. So how can you not fall into that mold of, you know what I mean? It takes an extraordinary type of person to do that. And Pistol Pete was probably a few different role models away from being a successful citizen. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. Why I say that is there's certain people in the world who have tremendous ability, right? Like, so like I said, I struggled with addiction when I was younger and stuff like that. And it would drive me nuts how these people could do a certain thing, you know, go out drinking or do a drug, and, you know, that's it. You know, like, meanwhile, I gotta be up to the birds are chirping. I gotta drink the bottle till I've beaten up half the bar, and, you know, always was that way. But some people have that willpower and that strength to just make a very tough decision look simple. Like, so for what my example is Pistol Pete didn't drink alcohol, didn't smoke marijuana, you know, and according to the book, it said his only vice was apple flavored bubblegum. So what does that tell you? That means that his moral code on the inside and how he structured himself as a man, he doesn't rat everybody else. A lot of his co-defendants turn on and rat him. He doesn't. You know what I mean? So you take that, you know what I mean? Like people used to tell me all the time, if you just took the stuff you come up with for stupidity and put it into something positive, oh my God, you'd be a rocket scientist. It's kind of like that with him, I think. You know what I mean? Like, this is just my assumption and opinion. But that's not what happened. So we're going to get into what happened with Pistol Pete. Now, these guys grew up differently. These guys grew up so much differently than most of us. You know, in the South Bronx at that time, like I said, his father was involved with Nicky Barnes and all them when heroin was the big drug. But, you know, here comes the late 70s and then the 80s with the cocaine. The cocaine turns to crack. Now it's mainstream everywhere. It doesn't have to be a social drug. Everybody can get high on cocaine, whether you smoke it, snort it, shoot it, whatever you want to do. And that was the drug of choice for them coming into this, okay? So, like, they got their start under this guy called Fat Mike. And Fat Mike ran a crew in Soundview. And this is where Pistol Pete met, you know, childhood and you know, essentially lifelong friends. Suge, his nickname Suge. His name is Sean. You're going to hear that name a lot. And then another mainstay, maybe my favorite character, the whole book, Pipe. Emilio, I think his name is Emilio Pipe Ramiro. And those two are mainstays. You got B-Love as well. You got Ro, who is Pipe's younger brother. That's another name you're gonna hear. Crackhead BMO is like a, you know, a mainstay in the projects. That's a name you'll hear if you read the book. He also has a son, BMO Jr., who is not a crackhead but a little gangster like these guys. So like I said, they get their start under a dealer in Soundview called Fat Mike. And you know, so what happened to Fat Mike and Co. This was 1986, I believe. Crack is in full swing. They're still a few years from becoming who they become and stuff like that. So they're under this kid, Fat Mike. And it says, as Fat Mike and Co. sat in their apartment in the Soundview homes in the South Bronx, snorting cocaine as they bagged up crack, at 3:30 a.m. a knock on the door aroused the three men. Fat Mike went to go answer the door. He looked through the peephole and saw someone he had known from the projects his entire life. Not a friend, more of an acquaintance, I guess you would say, Kirk Johnson. All three of the men knew him since childhood. Johnson sitting at the doorway. Fat Mike opens the door, and, you know, it's kind of sketchy, so Fat Mike must have went to go push the door closed. He shoves his foot in like this, signals four other armed gunmen. He pulls out a gun. They force their way into the apartment. They come running in the apartment armed with sawed-off shotguns and .380 pistols. The three in the apartment were selling on rivals' turf. Instantly, the three men begin to beg for their life, but it's too late for that. They were told to not sell in a certain location. Probably were told more than once. At this point, they're not coming to tell you. The message is, you know, message not received. So here, you know what I mean? So they're not coming in there to, you know, so they instantly start begging for their lives. They know what time it is. And, you know, as they beg for their life, please, we'll never do it again. We'll, you know, blah, 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 take what you want, go, get, you know. One of the gunmen said, fuck it, they all gonna die. And then at that point, one of the gunmen, most likely Kirk Johnson, jumped up onto the bed, and as people are trying to cower and run for their lives, he shoots down upon Fat Mike's head, and it obliterates the side of his head, exposing his brain and skeleton matter. It's a gruesome scene. And two people end up escaping with their lives. Three of them did not. So there was a total of 5 in the apartment. I don't know if I said that, but 5 in the apartment, 3 died, 2 survive, including the homeowner who manages to crawl his way out with half a leg and, you know, has been hit in the head. Very kind of similar to, like, if you've seen Paid in Full, you know, like how that, you know, a gruesome scene. And it said in the book, you know, they never quite felt the same after that as they watched. And they sat outside as they wheeled one after the other, you know. And they said it dawned on them that it was real when they saw one big rotund, you know, Fat Mike. You know, the other two couldn't really tell because under the black top, you know, who's who and what's what. But they noticed the big fat body, and you know, they knew that it was Fat Mike. That, you know, that it was Fat Mike and the rest of the guys, and they were dead. You know, so there goes the innocence along with everything else they've seen. Like I said, man, like, you know, the murder rate there is like on par with friggin' Mexico at this time. It's friggin' nuts, you know. You know what I mean? So anyways, so Fat Mike goes bye-bye and a new dealer steps in to Soundview. Now, this dealer, his name is E.T. Larry. And E.T. Larry has a little gang of robbers under him, and they sell drugs and all that in Soundview. And now that Fat Mike's gone, they're looking to move in and set up and stuff. And you know, so under E.T. Larry, it's Chiron Little, another guy named Lance, and then E.T. Larry himself, among with other people, but it doesn't really get into that. So pretty much what happens is they get tired of Pistol Pete and his little buddies, you know, selling crack here, selling crack there, and whatnot. And they decide to act on it. And they go and they kidnap one of Pistol Pete's friends, Suge, the kid Sean. And they pistol whip this kid, they beat him, they're trying to take him to another person who runs with them, another Soundview dealer named Baby J, goes by Baby. He's more close with Sean. Him and Pistol Pete don't really jive. You know how that is. You may get along with one person and then another person you don't, or you two get along but they don't and they don't, you know what I mean? So you kind of gotta, it was a kind of a situation like that, so to say. So anyways, they're taking them, Chiron and Lance and E.T. Larry, like, bring us to Baby's apartment right now. We know, you know, we know he's holding weight. We know he's got money. You know, you guys are out there selling his little dime bags and whatnot, and he doesn't want to give it up. So they're pistol whipping him. He's a tough little bastard, so he's hanging in there, and he eventually is like, okay, all right, you know, like, and as they're getting off the elevator, you know, they knew what floor it was, they didn't know what apartment it was. So he's like, you know, essentially tells them the first apartment he sees, it's that one, it's 4D, you know, and as they knock on the door, you know, they're holding him like this, and they're kind of out of sight, like, you know, just hiding around the corner. So when the door opens up to a random apartment, he fucking, you know, he makes his, you know, they go to rush in the apartment, he breaks off, runs down the hallway holding his head, he's half beaten to death and stuff, you know. This is life. They're probably like 13 years old back then, you know what I mean? Like 12, 13, 14 years old, you know, whereas like, we get in fist fights and stuff like that, you think you're bad. These kids are you know, escaping drug kidnappings and potential executions and you know, selling drugs, and I mean, New York is just a crazy place, let alone the Bronx, let alone South Bronx, Soundview homes, circa late 80s, you know, early to mid 90s. It's insane. It's nuts. So anyways, he makes it all the way to Pistol Pete's house, runs I think like a mile and some change to Pistol Pete's house, and you know, he's beeping on the buzzer and stuff, and Pete lets him in, and Pete was just a smooth character. He had his father's friends around kind of schooling him and stuff like that, and like I said, his father was a serious gangster, and you know, his pedigree was firm. So like, what's he do? What does any good friend do? Come on in, you know, has him come in. Oh shit, he's got his girlfriend tending to him, right? Pistol Pete has his girlfriend tending to him. Hey yo, go in the room and take a few painkillers from my mom. You know, get some ice, yada yada. They sew up the cut and stuff like that. And he's like, who did this? We'll go get the, you know what I mean? So that's how he spent that night. He spent that night with Pete, and Pete held him down. You know, just a solid guy. You know, you cannot respect it. That, you know what I mean? You may not respect what some of the actions the man did, but as far as how a man's supposed to, what image a man's supposed to project in that game, in that environment, yeah, he did that. You know, so eventually the next day comes, he probably kicks the girlfriend out, go home, you know, and he calls the boys together. You know, Pete was probably the oldest one at that point. I think he was like 15, maybe a couple of them were 14. The youngest, like Pipe, is probably like 11, 12, you know, real young kids. Suge's probably like 13. And so they call them all together. Pete goes in the back, comes out with a hockey bag, unzips that thing. He's got like a Tech 9, a sawed-off carbine 30 rifle or something like that, like the wackiest bunch of guns. But hey, whatever, like the little bastard had, you know, at 15, he's sitting back there, he's got an arsenal. And they're like, oh yeah, so they start handing out guns and stuff like that. And I believe they initially, they went right out that day, I believe. So they went out that day, and they're walking around the projects, concealing their guns, and, you know, they got them in backpacks and stuff. And one of them's like, oh, there's so-and-so right there. And, you know, Lance. So Suge, being like your typical, like, you know, he's like that kid with like ADHD who can't sit still. Instead of waiting and letting them come to a spot where they can ambush him or whatever, which Pete was trying to say, and Suge's like, screw this, he starts running, and he's letting off with the Tech 9. This is in the middle of the projects, and at, you know, broad daylight, in the middle of projects, people are ducking and diving. This kid gets grazed, the bullets skip up from the cement and hit him. You know, he gets hit in his leg, he falls down, they fucking run out of there. They're like, you know, it's comical. I remember reading this part in the book and being like, oh my God, like, you know, here I am. Like, I thought I was bad. Like, you know, getting in fistfights and stuff. Not, you know, these kids are out broad daylight having gun battles with grown men in the projects. You know, nuts. And, you know, so anyways, so they get out of there. That situation, you know, missed attempt. They hit him, but, you know, it was like a graze wound to his leg. He was all right. And it kind of went back and forth like this, back and forth. And it was like a little war between Pistol Pete and E.T. Larry for, you know, whoever won this battle, whoever won out, was going to control Soundview. And Pistol Pete wanted that more than anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care that E.T. Larry's 22 and I'm 15. I don't care. I'll kill that. You know what I mean? Like, that was the mindset. That was the, you know what I mean? And he was someone who later on would school himself. I'm sure the father probably sat in prison reading the stuff, told him to read it. Schooled himself on Machiavelli, the Prince, and Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and used it to manipulate. And, you know, he was a sharp kid. He was a very sharp kid. But yeah, so, you know, after peace talks with E.T. Larry subside, Pete and co, they go and they're gritting their teeth, meeting with E.T. Larry, trying to see if they can take the diplomatic route, or better yet, rock him to sleep, let him think it's over, come up and bang. But that don't work. So, a couple more incidents happen, shooting back and forth. We'll wrap it up. I'm going to try to keep this video somewhat short. It's going to be a long video either way. There's so much, so I'm trying to compress a little bit without taking away from the story, if that makes sense. So anyways, after a few bungled hits on both sides, they're sitting at home one day. You know, it's like essentially like, you know, in the mob, they hit the mattresses and stuff like that. So they're sitting in the house, and someone, BMO Jr. is like, oh, I'm gonna go to the store. Does anybody need anything? Anybody want anything? People are like, no, it's cool. And so BMO Jr. goes to the store. He, as soon as he walks in the store, he's looking at something. All of a sudden, he feels someone grab him from behind like that. And, you know, next thing you know, he spins around. It's Chiron Little, E.T. Larry's number 2, you know, feared hitter in Soundview, very, very dangerous guy. And he's got his pistol pointed at him, not quite in his face like that, but kind of like, you know, somewhere in his chest. And he's like, you like shooting guns, little motherfucker? You know what I mean? Like, you like shooting that? And mind you, this is a little kid, you know? So he's probably thinking in his head, like, God damn, like, I gotta wait like 2 years to smoke this little bastard. If I kill a 13-year-old kid, you know, he's probably like 18, 19, you know? How's that gonna look? So he did the one thing you don't do in the streets or in a fight or anything, whether it's a gun or your hands or whatever. You don't turn your back. You don't do that. Especially after you just pressed somebody too and you showed your back to them. Like, oh man, you better know who you're doing that to, because even the biggest pussy in the world is gonna take a shot at you. You know, sometimes, you know. But yeah, so anyways, so he turns around to leave, like, you know, I'm not gonna do this little kid right here. And so he goes to turn and leave the store. BMO Jr., pissed off, frustrated, I'm a dangerous motherfucker too, you know what I mean? Pulls out his gun and goes, oh, you the bitch now. And he went, turned around, tried to run, boom, 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 boom. Drops him with 3 shots right outside of the store, right in broad daylight. His 15-year-old girlfriend, which is kind of sketchy if you ask me, but she's outside, and she's seeing this whole thing. She's screaming, ah! Chiron Little's, like, crawling, trying to get to his car, and BMO, the 13-year-old hitman, just calmly walks up, puts 2 in his melon. Dead, right there, you know? And now, Soundview is theirs for the taking, and boy, did they take it. You know what I mean? So let's really get into now that I've described their childhood and some of the stuff that they had to deal with as kids, their parents, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, Suge grew up in foster care. Pike grew up in a house similar to mine. You know, one parent, you know, typical single family home struggles and stuff. Read the book. And, you know, it was crazy. It's just a crazy, crazy story. So, anyways, they didn't start off as Sex, Money, Murder. So how that name came about is actually, it's the, it was Pistol Pete's cousin, I believe, who was from South Central. He flew out sometime, this is like probably 1991 or 2, maybe, somewhere in there, 90, 91, 92, somewhere in there. And he comes out to New York and they were clowning on him because he's got all the blue on and he's all cripped up. And they're like, look at this fucking blueberry motherfucker, you know, like, they're like, look at this guy. And, you know, he's like, man, you guys don't know nothing, like, back home where I'm from, this is the real stuff, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't do that stuff out there. And he's like, man, you guys don't know nothing about, you know, no gang banging or whatever. All you guys care about is sex, money, and murder. You know, and Pistol Pete and maybe a few others' eyebrows must have raised and been like, yes, you know, like, that's it. So that's where the name Sex, Money, Murder comes from. And, you know, it was nuts. It was nuts how these guys operated and whatnot. You know, Pistol Pete was a hustler. Like, they did it all. Like, he ended up, like, you know, he expanded his empire and his enterprise to lengths that your typical street dealer would not and could not back then. Like he did it all, man. Like, he not only would he supply the weapons and have your back and be there for you and whatnot, you know, he busted his gun off too. Like, you know, so he would go out and kill just as easily for himself as for a friend or whoever, you know what I mean? Like, and that buys that loyalty, that lifelong loyalty, you know what I mean? I do for you, you do for me in whatever way you know how, you know what I mean? Like, so he used that to you know, maximum effect. And, you know, the older he got, you know, the more they started expanding and stuff like that. Like they made a lot of stuff popular. Like, it's, you know, it says that they were some of the first people in New York or the Bronx to do the stash bot stuff with the vehicles and stuff like that. So, you know, you gotta turn one of the dials to the AC to hot, then you gotta turn the volume button all the way to the left, put your left blinker on, tap the gas twice and then rev it while it's in idle. And, you know, a hydraulic little box opens up with guns and drugs and all that stuff. They kind of really, like, you know, were some of the first ones to do that. You know, they even took it as far as, like, when he met Yarrow Pack, this kid Cod, who was another, you know, just a very smart dealer. You know what I mean? What they did was they incorporated Sex Money Murder. So it became Sex Money Murder Incorporated, SMM Inc. And so what that allowed it to do, it allowed them to do all this crazy stuff. Like, this is really kind of, you know, on par with some of the stuff Big Meech was doing and stuff like that. Like, so they had their own company that was cutting paychecks to them and stuff like that. So say you're a corner boy, or you're a lieutenant or whatever, you know, you get paid according to whatever it is to, you know, and that's not counting, like, you know, commission and stuff like that. If you're you know what I mean? Like, so they're cutting them checks essentially from a company, so you're paying taxes on this stuff. You're able to spend all of your money. It's genius, you know. They really did a lot of stuff like that. That was really kind of firsthand them. You know what I mean? And they wouldn't. It was nuts. It was nuts. The amount of people they were killing and murdering was just crazy. You know, to stand out in a time like this back then. You know what I mean? Late 80s, early 90s, New York City, the Bronx, you know what I mean? Like, you know how many different drug gangs and drug networks and all types of shit there was? You had to be the baddest of the fucking baddest to be noticed amongst all them. Because, you know what I mean? Like, think about it. Think about that time period, how crazy it was. Like I said, 2,000 plus homicides a year, you know what I mean? Like, that's absurd. That's absurd, you know? Well, let's go ahead and, you know, so, like, and they took it out everywhere. Like, Suge ended up going out to Springfield, Massachusetts. You know what I mean? And made a killing out there. You know, he went out to Springfield with the same guy that he stood tall for, the Baby J guy. The one they were trying to rob when he got pistol whipped that started the war with E.T. Larry. Yeah, that's who he went out to Springfield with. And by the time when they first got out there, crack was really, you know, this is probably like 88, you know, somewhere in there. And, you know, it wasn't New York City, it wasn't the Bronx, so they were kind of throwing their weight around and this and that, you know, and it was all good at first. But it says that, you know, it says they established many crack houses out there, and he was with Baby J, and he shot people, and people shot at him, you know, so it only got worse the longer he was there. It took them, you know, like we've always, you know, Massachusetts is kind of, you know, it's a smaller place than New York City and whatnot, just like other places compared to New York, you know, we're kind of in their shadow and stuff, but, you know, as the years go on, people get more and more the money, you know, that's why they started taking it out of town and going to different places and stuff, because the money dries up. It becomes too hard to earn a buck. Like, even if you're capable of doing it, do you want to do that? Do you really want to go out there and shoot it out for a few bucks on the corner when you could take it to some fucking farm town, you know, Hickville, where they're stupid, they're slower, you can double charge, triple charge. It's not, you know, you gotta do maybe one act of violence and that's it, it's done, you know. Probably wouldn't even have to go farther than punching somebody in the mouth and beating them up on a corner or something. So that's why the allure of going out of state became so intense for these guys. Like, you know, so like I said, one of the places they branched out to was in Springfield with Suge. What ended up happening to him was he got shot twice out there. Once was not too bad. Another time he got lit up when his gun jammed. He got hit up in his back, collapsed his lung. He was in a coma for a while. This all happened out in Springfield, Mass. And then he ended up getting some drug charges put on him, plus with the guns and stuff like that. He did like a 3 to 4 at Walpole, back when Walpole was really popping. You know, like, it was hilarious. I guess, like, he had robbed and beaten up so many people and shot so many people out there in Springfield that when they brought him into Walpole, this part of the book is hilarious. They're like, he's coming in, he's like, oh, this is their big house, like their, Attica or whatever. And he's coming in and they're like, hey, Suge, ain't no guns in here, motherfucker. I'm gonna fucking kick your head in. I'm gonna fucking, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. So in other words, like, yeah, you were a big tough guy when you had that gun fucking in my face. Let's see how tough you are now. Like, that stuff like that happens a lot, where when you take away certain things, like when you're not able to shoot somebody or use a weapon or whatever, when it's just these, watch how fucking soft some people really get. They, it's a different world these days. But yeah, that's just one of the places he went. They established routes going down to Pittsburgh and to Charlotte, North Carolina, back up to the Bronx, which became known as the Golden Triangle for cocaine back at this time period. And ultimately, this is where Pistol Pete would actually run into his trouble after multiple murders and stuff like that, and some notable murders. Carlton Hines. You can. I'm not going to get into that too much on here. The video's already really long. The Carlton Hines story is on YouTube. Type that in, and you'll see an ultimate thing where this kid was like a phenom for basketball, the LeBron James of back then, before LeBron was on par to do all this, but. Long story short, he started getting in trouble. He went up to New Hampshire to go to this boarding school, prep school, college type stuff. That didn't work out. He missed home. He comes back home. He ends up killing somebody in a fight. Something happens. He breaks a bottle, hits the guy with a bottle or something. Anyways, self-defense. He kills a guy and gets off. He becomes a drug kingpin in the Bronx. He was from Cortlandt Avenue in the Bronx, South Bronx. And he bumped heads with Pistol Pete or something, jealousy or whatnot, without getting into it too much. So what happens with him is they track him to a car wash, right? He's in there getting a car wash. One of the people at the car wash knows Pistol Pete. And Pistol Pete, he goes and calls him. Pistol Pete's like, stall him, keep him there. So he's like, sir, let me show you this alarm system as well. And, Carlton Hines is like, come on, bro, I got places to be. And he's like, come on, man, I'm gonna, you know how sleazy them car people are. I'd be like, come on, I'll give you this thing at 85% off, completely was just trying to keep him there, so who knows what the fuck he was saying. But it works. He keeps him there, and he's watching like this, looking in the car. Pistol Pete sneaks up behind Carlton Hines and ends, the Bronx's best basketball player. It's a terrible. That's one of the main stories why people really don't like Pistol Pete. I feel like too that story, because the kid had potential, and sure, he was a drug dealer and came back and became a kingpin too, but. He didn't deserve to go like that. Go look up that story, the Carlton Hines story. Fantastic. A couple other high-profile homicides. There was a whole lot of stuff. They were crazy. Before we get into the ending and see how this all shakes out, there was a hilarious scene in the book, right? This is probably one of my favorite scenes, and we didn't get to really get into Pipe today, too. I might do a whole nother video on that kid alone. He was nuts. It's just too much time, too much, So anyways, they're at the Tunnel nightclub, right? And it's 93, I think. And it says Pete is trying to court P. Diddy, Puff Daddy back then. And, because there's Peter Guns and Lord Tariq were two Soundview South Bronx rappers that he was trying to get in their ear and get them on. They became famous, but, not like probably they could have. But anyway, so they're sitting there talking to P. Diddy and stuff in the tunnel. They're, shooting the shit, this sex, money, murder, blah, blah, blah. They're the real deal. And they're out there on the dance floor, and there's two other people a part of Sex, Money, Murder. But Pete merges Sex, Money, Murder with Castle Hill, which is another housing project right in the area. So he merges them together, makes the gang even bigger and more, and so what he does is he's walking with this other kid named Twin, who will come into the story at the ending. There's two of them, but Damon Mullins. Damon Mullins. They called twin, but they were twins, two of them, Damon and David Mullins. So he's with twin, Pipe and twin are together, and they're walking. And it says they bump shoulders with someone in the club, in the tunnel. It's dark. They're drinking. Pete buys out all the Cristal. And someone bumps into Pipe, and Pipe's the little hothead of the group, shooting guns since he was like 11. And the guy says something to him, and he's just like, boom, yeah, and hits him over the head with the bottle of champagne. It doesn't even break. Like, if you know what I'm talking about, like, you know that sound if that's ever happened, and it's just like, boom, it's and you're like, oh, and the guy's like, what the fuck? And, they walk off, and they get back over to Pete, and someone's telling Puff Daddy, like, oh my God, someone just smashed Nas in the head with a champagne bottle. And they're like, it says in the book, they both look at each other like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, how fun, that's something, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's something stupid I would do when I was like 21 or 20, like, and he's like, damn, my bad, Pete, I didn't know, you couldn't tell, like, And I guess Nas was like real cool about it and stuff, like didn't press the issue, but that's hilarious. That's who Pipe was. He was just a tough dude, So, anyways, so let's get going. So they're piling up, they're doing all this stuff. They get Sex Money Murder Inc. They get all this stuff, so they're cutting paychecks to people. Everything is legitimate. Everything is flowing. The money's rolling in. The bodies are dropping. The girls, You're from New York City. They're branching out. They're going here. They're going there. When he meets Yarrow Pack, who had already established ties out in Pittsburgh, like Yarrow Pack was the brains and the entrepreneurial smart guy, and had all these quirky, like, slick stuff, like the incorporating and all that. But Pete was the muscle behind it all. But he had the brains too. You know what I mean? Like Pete could do what Yarrow Pack did himself, but Yarrow Pack couldn't do what he accomplished together, what they did together. You get what I'm saying? Like, so Pete kind of used him up too, you know what I mean, in a sense. But anyways, these guys worked real good together when it did work. So they make inroads out to Pittsburgh from the Bronx, down to Charlotte, North Carolina, then back up to the Bronx. Then you have Suge out there in Springfield bouncing in and back. I think he's locked up at this point. And, they're just, the money's rolling in, they're dropping bodies, they're not worried about nothing. And, while they're down there down in North Carolina, Pistol Pete was enraged with one of their wholesalers who was taking too long to pay back money or whatever. So he decides to go with them like an idiot. Now, they're driving in a car, they get pulled over on the way there. Something suspicious. These three guys, they're like, what the hell? Now, mind you, everything was leased through the company. So this car was leased through SMM Inc. You know what I mean? Which looked on paper, all red. It doesn't say, hey, Sex Money Murder Incorporated. No, it says SMM Inc. You know what I mean? So it just looks like some company. And the cars are leased through there, and everything's leased through them, and they're cutting paychecks. That's how he pays everybody in his organization. Genius. And so they get a bad sense about this stop. They bring a canine. The canine hits. Canine hits on the car. They're like, whatever, like, what the fuck, you didn't find anything. So they don't arrest him right there, but they tow the vehicle. And they have no choice but to, what are you going to say? Oh, no, yeah, go ahead, take my vehicle, I'm not coming. No, they go with them, so they rip the car apart, they find a stash spot eventually. They found multiple kilos of pure cocaine, a few guns, and I want to say $250,000 in cash. Fucked, So anyways, even still, he's facing like 40-something years, which he was going to do. Trust me, he was going to do. People, he bails out. He goes back to New York City. Soon as he touches down, he's arrested for the murder of Carlton Hines, the basketball phenom who, I'm telling you, that is a crazy story in itself. It's really sad. But you'll understand, because I only really kind of barely touched on the Carlton Hines thing. It's too long to get into. Check it out on YouTube, Carlton Hines story. Real good. So anyways, they bring murder charges on Pistol Pete for the Carlton Hines murder. And while he's sitting in Rikers Island, like this story just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. He's sitting in Rikers Island. Now, mind you, in New York City in the early 90s to mid 90s, this is like 96, I believe, 96. The Bloods and some Crips and national gangs crept into New York City through their prison systems. And it started in the jails in Rikers Island. Who was locked up there at this time with Pistol Pete? Go figure. Omar Porte, OG Mac, and OG Deadeye. Number 1 and 2 in UBN, the United Bloods Nation, which is new at this point. They just started this out. I guess Porte was a Brooklyn guy. He had family out in LA, went out there, lived out there for a bit, got in some trouble, locked up. Loved how everything was set up out there with the Bloods and the Crips and all that. Came back home, got in more trouble, was inside, meets another like-minded guy, the OG Deadeye guy, and they start UBN, United Blood Nation, which is the East Coast Bloods. So while they're in prison, while they're in Rikers Island, this guy comes by Pete. Everybody knows who he is. His name's in the papers. Sex, Money, Murder. These guys are not only the most feared gang out of the Bronx for their time, they might have been the most feared gang out of New York at this time. Like, they were savage. You got to go read that book, Sex, Money, Murder. Amazing book. So, you know, they're like, we want you to be a Blood. Come join us. Be a Blood. Be part of UBN. We need a powerful leader like you. And Pete, being the good leader he is, says, "You want me to be Blood? All right, I'll come over and I'll be Blood. But I want to keep my gang. I want to make it a set. You know what I mean? So that's the only way I'll become a Blood. And you know, I want to keep my gang, Sex, Money, Murder. You just make it a Blood set. That way it falls under your umbrella." And they had no problem with that. So boom. Pistol Pete gets one of the original, I think it was like 7 or 8, the original 7 or 8 Blood sets out of New York City. Tell me in the comment section below. I could be wrong. I like to put out accurate information, so if I'm wrong on that, just let me know down below in the comment section. So I just know for future reference and stuff. But yes, so they get him aboard. So now Sex, Money, Murder is not only just a vicious gang, they're now affiliated with and it's like double the resources. So anytime you're locked up, the resources are, you know what I mean? You got 4 or 5 guys under you. On the street, you got your actual gang, you know what I mean? So Pistol Pete's living like a king. And while he's, this is what I was trying to get into today. So my meaning of dropping it today is, football, right? I'm waiting for my Patriots to come on, stuff like that. And so there's an annual thing that the high schools do it here. Housing projects do it as well. Turkey Day, right? This project's versus that project's. For us in Quincy, it'd be like this neighborhood versus that neighborhood, or this park versus that park. And they had an annual thing every year where they play football at the projects. So when Pistol Pete's going away and people are starting to flip, he's facing a regardless. He's going to do 40-something years down there in North Carolina, regardless. But now he's facing the Carlton Hines murder charges. He's facing all these other things, and it's not looking good. And Twin, the Twin, the one that was with Pipe when he bottled Nas, he kind of picks up the rock and he's running point while Pete goes away. Most people don't have a problem with this. They expected Pete not to have a problem with this, but he didn't. He got jealous. He got, I'm in here, he's out there. So what does he do? Well, old buddy Suge had come back around. He just got back from prison. He's back in Soundview, and he had really come back around right before Pete went away and stuff. So he was like a strong number 2 right under Twin. And Pete writes him a letter in all code. It's encoded. And it says, "Bang, bang on the Doublemint twins. They gotta go." And it said, "They ain't trying to see me come home, Black. They telling, blah, blah, blah." So it was in all this, like, coded language. In other words, bang, bang on the Doublemint twins means kill the Mullins twins. Whack them out. I don't care how you gotta do it, do it. And he goes, okay. And so Thanksgiving 1997, right? They're watching the football game go on, and they're playing. They're in the middle of playing. So they come up with an idea. It's Suge, this other kid, Mac 11, and Green Eyes. They're all armed. They all have Mac 11. Literally has a Mac 11, I think. Like they're fully armed. They got bulletproof vests on and stuff. So they go ahead to go over there, and they see them. They're all warming up, getting ready for football. Now they plan this hit accordingly. You take this person. I take that person. You take this person. Each one had a specified person they were going to hit. There was 3 targets: the 2 Mullins twins and their bodyguard, Efren Solar. Those 3, that's who they were going to hit. They were going to preferably hit the bodyguard first because they're about to play football. They most likely don't have their guns on them. He's probably holding their guns for them like usually they do for different gangsters at the projects. So they do exactly that. They come out and they got their football gear on, like they're getting ready to, and instead of stretching out and stuff, he just friggin' they give each other a look, and instantly someone lets off right into the boom, 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 hits the security guard, their security guard. He falls dead on the spot. Suge and another gunman led into the 2 Mullins twins taking off. Boom, 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 boom. One of the Mullins twins gets really riddled. And he goes and he collapses in the projects, dies right there. The other Mullins twin makes it a little farther up and collapses in the street. The ambulance gets to him. I know he was brought to the hospital in critical condition. I'm pretty sure he passed away too. So it was a triple murder on Thanksgiving 1997 that really put the nails in the coffin for Pistol Pete and co. There was really no coming back from that. Half the gang was split up after that. They all get arrested. Suge flips. I'm not sure if Pipe flips, but the rest of them all flip. B-Love, Yaro Pack, all them, they all flip. And Pistol Pete narrowly avoids the death penalty by like this much. But I mean, honestly, I think I might rather want the death penalty than to go to the Supermax. And like I said, I said who I feel belongs there and whatnot. Enjoy your football today, guys. You know what I mean? So anyways, that's gonna do it. There's, like I said, it's so much stuff in the story. It's hard to really kind of compact it all and give it to you guys like I really wanted to. If you like the video, comment. If I messed anything up or if I got anything wrong on that blood culture stuff or any of the gang stuff that I'm wrong, comment that down below. Let me know what I got wrong. Enjoy the day, guys. Pray for me and my Patriots. They need a win. And good luck to you and yours.